Kenya has stepped up efforts to work closely with the European Union in order to ensure that both animal and plant products exported to Europe meet the required standards.
And for that reason, the EU, in partnership with various implementing agencies here in Kenya, initiated the Standards and Market Access Program in 2013 to enable farmers adhere to the set standards.
Welcome to the program. My name is Alex Chamwada and my co-host is Elijah Mwangi. Today we look at what it takes to break into the EU market through the eyes of Jackson Masesi, a beekeeper who was the first to be enlisted as an exporter of beeswax from Kenya to the EU market.
Beeswax, we realized, was exportable to the European market as long as it's coming from any third world country.
We shall then look at the dynamics of exporting to the European Union by engaging different stakeholders in the industry.
When you're exporting food or when you're exporting some goods and services, you are required to adhere to certain standards. Among them being that a product that comes from Kenya should be able to be traced right back to the farmer who produced it, what conditions were used, and to verify whether certain pesticides were used in the right way or not.
Well, efforts are being made, but Kenya is yet to be removed from the European Union's quality watch list, and here is the reason why.
EU, it's a sophisticated market. There are very stringent market access requirements, especially when it comes to food safety standards.
The stringent measures on both plant and animal products being exported to EU market are giving both farmers and exporters sleepless nights, with some arguing that Kenya is now facing east when it comes to exports and generally trade. The fact is that Kenya horticultural sector heavily relies on the European market. We start the show by looking at some facts and figures on the European market.
The European Union is Kenya's major trading partner, and the agricultural sector is the biggest beneficiary of the EU market. Horticulture and floriculture are taking lead. Bear in mind, some 70% of Kenya's total flower production is exported to the EU. Vincent Dibora, the head of macroeconomics EU Kenya, breaks down the numbers.
If you look at trade between the EU and Kenya, you see a very vibrant relationship. The EU absorbs about 25% of Kenya's exports, which means every year almost or around 100 billion Kenya shillings worth of goods, mainly from the agricultural sector, find their way onto the European market. It's 28 countries, 500 million, half a billion consumers who all have money to spend.
No doubt that the EU market is huge for Kenya, but according to economist Kwame Owino, Kenya is yet to exploit its full potential in the EU market.
We had quotas on sugar in the 80s, and we never exhausted them. So a quota would say, for instance, that you're entitled to 100,000 tons, for instance, for Kenya, another 200,000 for Uganda or Tanzania and all that. Kenya never exhausted our quotas, both for beef and also for sugarcane. Because of that systematic failure or the consistent failure to meet that, those quotas were then transferred and a few other countries applied and got them. So for instance, Mauritius, which was a heavy sugar exporter into the European Union, had the capacity to deliver, then used that opportunity to call for those quotas to be redistributed. And so the quotas for Kenya and a few other countries were brought down, not for any other reason, not for punitive purposes, but because those quotas were not being utilized, and then they were transferred to other countries.
The European Union is the biggest trade bloc in the world, accounting for around 15% of global exports and imports. It's also the second largest importer after USA and the second largest exporter after China. The EU market is open to developing countries but has very stringent measures on quality control. The Horticultural Crops Development Authority data shows that between April 2016 and May 2017, Kenya's exports have suffered a total of 46 interceptions.
Some farmers have raised alarm over increased blockage of their products to the EU market. This is simply because of quality concerns. However, the situation is different for Jackson Masesi. After a thorough scrutiny and endless inspections by the authorities in his farm, he was given the green light to access the EU market with a rare commodity, beeswax. He shares his experience with Elijah Mwangi.
At Beekeeper Apiaries in Thika, another consignment of beeswax from West Pokot arrives. For Jackson Masesi, the director at Beekeeper Apiaries, this is one of those busy days when he has to receive what he calls crude beeswax from one of his agents. When you talk of apiculture or perhaps beekeeping, what comes to mind is the honey. But did you know that you can actually make a lot from beeswax? Jackson Masesi understands this too well. When he founded Beekeeper Apiaries in the year 2013, Masesi was focused on buying, processing and marketing natural bee products, mainly honey, for local and international export markets. However, this time the focus has changed.
We came to the conclusion that we should go to the beeswax business, which we found it had not many people doing it. So we found there was a space on that, as compared to the honey business, which is kind of too much congested. So we thought of diversifying to beeswax, and we are glad that now beeswax is one of our major core business in Beekeeper Apiaries.
When Masesi decided to go full throttle on beeswax, the first thing was to mobilize agents from various regions in the country.
Bruden honeycomb.
Daniel Kipchirchir is one of the agents. He's just from West Pokot with about 3 tons of beeswax. He tells us what it takes to collect the beeswax in West Pokot.
Unachukua asali, una extract, una separate from liquid honey. After separating from liquid honey, unaichukua hizo machicha yake. Ile unaonanga watu wakitafuna, wakitupa. Hiyo ni pesa. Ikiwa full ndoo, inatoa about 3 kilos or 3.5 kilos. Ikiwa imeoshwa na ready to process.
Beeswax has numerous uses in several markets such as cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, candles, polishes and food coatings. However, establishing a reliable market for beeswax is not easy. In trying to secure a stable market for beeswax, Masesi decided to face west, the EU market.
Most of the wax now is for last season.
Oh yeah.
So we realized it was not very easy because there are regulations laid down by the EU that the facility should meet to export beeswax to the European market. And then we had to do a little bit of research and see what are the requirements that are needed for exporters to export to the European market. When we were trying to check on the requirements, of course for honey and the beeswax, we realized honey was around in 2006 or so, was suspended for export to the European market. Beeswax, we realized was exportable to the European market as long as it's coming from any third world country. So we asked, okay, if beeswax it can be exported from any third world country, then we obviously meet that requirement.
Food safety is a top priority in all EU food sectors, and since beeswax is sometimes used for food coatings, systems require companies to demonstrate their ability to control food safety hazards.
The wax that is exported to EU should not contain like foreign materials, should not contain bees. It should be melted at not less than 100 degrees Celsius. Then it should also meet some standards like what we call an adulteration of beeswax.
Expansion. Masesi is a beneficiary of Standards and Market Access Program SMAP, initiated by the European Union in 2013. He says the Department of Veterinary Services, which was one of the implementing agencies of SMAP, has played a critical role in his enlistment as an exporter of beeswax to the EU.
We had to apply to the DVS because one of the requirements was to be approved by a competent authority in the country. And the competent authority in Kenya is the Department of Veterinary Services in Kabete. And they were the one to apply on behalf of Beekeeper to EU that Beekeeper meets this kind of standards so that we can be listed in the European Union.
And for those interested in beeswax business, there is more good news. According to Food and Agriculture Organization, the population of bees in Europe is expected to reduce in future. This means EU countries will need to import larger amounts of honey and beeswax from producers outside the EU to satisfy the demand.
Thank you so much, Elijah Mwangi, for that informative piece. We do hope that more farmers will be given permits to access the EU market. At this point, we take a short break. We will be back with more from stakeholders. Welcome back. In case you've just joined us, we are discussing the dynamics of the EU market. To access the EU market, several agencies are involved in order to ensure that the set standards are adhered to.
Some of these agencies include Kenya Bureau of Standards, Chams, Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, KEFIS, Directorate of Veterinary Services, DVS, and United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. So which role does each of these agencies play?
EU is a sophisticated market. Everything being exported to the European Union has to be subjected to thorough scrutiny. For plant and animal products, the EU has laid down maximum levels of contaminants, pesticides, and criteria for microbiological contamination of food. For those exporting plant and animal products from Kenya to EU, they have to adhere to certain standards. These standards are developed by Kenya Bureau of Standards, KEBS, in consultation with relevant stakeholders.
Technically, we also get some experts from SMAP who join us during our discussions, and they really help us to benchmark our documents in terms of compliance to the SPS and TBT treaties of the World Trade Organization, so that whatever we are doing will ensure that our products can be able to attain market access both in our country, regionally and globally.
The whole idea is to promote and help these organizations to put in place infrastructure that will help assure products both locally consumed and for the export market.
And out of this, industry has actually benefited by gaining access. So the small, medium enterprises who have been subjected to quality standards by our team, they are now able to meet those requirements, and out of that, they have been able to penetrate the otherwise markets which they would not have done.
After the standards are developed, Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, KEFIS, is tasked with enforcing the standards touching on plant products. Here, we are talking about fresh fruits and vegetables. Floriculture is also in this category.
In 2014, the country had some challenge with the compliance of exports of agriculture produce to the EU, and the EU was concerned about the pesticide levels that were being detected, especially in French bean and peas. With the introduction of the EU's map, we were able to train the stakeholders on what was expected with regard to compliance with the pesticide levels, and also train our staff on pesticide analysis. Also equip our laboratory, because before then there were certain analyses that we were not able to do. So the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service has an analytical chemistry laboratory, and in this laboratory we analyze for quality of the water, the soil, pesticides also, and also the quality of the products themselves. whether they have pesticide residues. And this has led to increase in confidence in our markets of the Kenyan produce. I hear it's in very high demand, and we have received even feedback from the National Plant Protection Organization that are similar to KEFIS from the UK, Germany and the Netherlands, confirming that the products that we are sending are free from pesticide residue.
As far as plant products are concerned, farmers in Kenya find themselves between a rock and a hard place in getting rid of pests in their farms as EU agencies continue to lower the maximum residue level. That is the highest level of pesticide residue in the exported plant products.
The issue of pesticide residue starts at the farm level. What is the farmer spraying? And then after that, the exporter, what is he buying? Then after that, the exporter gives his product to clearing agents. Are they taking care of the product to ensure that the good product that they were given is the same one that is going to the market?
When it comes to animal products, Kenya has been eyeing the European market, especially beef market, but the road to EU has been a rough one. This is after EU banned the importation of Kenyan beef due to food safety concerns as a result of livestock diseases, especially from arid and semi-arid areas, which contribute about 60% of the meat market in the country. Kenya mainly exports animal products to the Middle East.
Our products now, the meat which we slaughter in Kenya, has accessed the Saudi Arabia market, which came and did a risk assessment, and through the standards which were prepared, and now we have accessed that market. And Saudi Arabia, being of the leading countries in the Middle East, has spurred other neighboring Middle East countries like United Arab Emirates and Qatar, who have also followed suit, and they also import products from Kenya.
Issues have been raised concerning Kenya adequately complying with disease control requirements as set out in the World Animal Health Organization. With the EU standards, products must be traceable throughout the supply chain, and so even how DVS controls livestock diseases across the country plays a major role in being given a green light to access the EU market.
I think the market, not only for the European Union, but also for Africa, our neighbors in Africa here, the market is big, especially milk. So if we are able to tap into that market, that would be fantastic, really. As for the European countries, I know they are very, very strict on antibiotic residues. They will not accept any product which has got a high level of antibiotics. This would be very beneficial if we are able to determine the levels of antibiotics in our products here and then certify that they are products which can be exported.
We are intervening in all stages of the food chain of products of animal origin. Beef, milk, honey, to mention a few. And we are making sure that the producers, be they farmers, be they fisher folk, that we ensure that they are producing animals that will eventually produce products that are safe and can meet the international standards.
Whether dealing with plant or animal products, increasing the capacity of producers, processors and traders to enable them meet food safety and commercial standards is key in breaking into the EU market. This means various agencies involved in enforcement of standards working closely with United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO.
We partnered with UNIDO because one of FPIC's strategic roles is training and capacity building of stakeholders in the industry. And one of the most important stakeholders is agronomists and those people who provide technical services to smallholder farmers. So we find it important to make sure that they have the necessary information and skills and update them on the current requirements in the international marketplace, including international regulations and that affect market access to our products. So
it's no doubt that breaking into the EU market requires collaboration, partnerships and by extension cooperation of the nations involved. Unless that is done, the dream to have some of our Kenyan products in the EU market might remain to be just that, a dream.
Those are roles played by various stakeholders in the enforcement of EU standards, and there are those who argue that certain EU policies, for example, subsidies for farmers in Europe and cheap imports, are hurting Kenyan farmers and exporters. Let's now get an expert view.
There is a legitimate case to be made for subsidies, but remember, the subsidies that are given to European farmers by the European governments is very, very high. I mean, comparatively, very, very high, and it makes, yes, what it does that it ensures that these farmers, especially whether it's dairy or other farmers, they have excess. They produce surpluses. Those surpluses then depress international prices. That's true. However, it is not true to say that subsidies are not, African countries don't give subsidies. If you look at a country like Kenya, some of our farmers, especially those who produce maize and other crops, do receive subsidies as well. Yet instead, it is the sectors that do not receive subsidies, such as horticulture, which are doing well within the EU. So the subsidy argument, as a matter of principle, is real, but it's both a problem for the EU and we in the African Union. So it's an issue that needs to be solved. From an economics point of view, however, as I said, as a principal question, it might lead to unfairness of trade. But what it does eventually is that for Kenyan consumers, we are able to receive cheap goods and services, especially if that agricultural produce comes into our country, in as much as it might be limiting the scope for growth for our local farmers, but it actually makes the Kenyan consumer access a little cheaper some of the goods that may have come from them. So a subsidy on its own is an issue as a matter of principle, but it shouldn't be the deal maker, because from first principles of economics, it doesn't matter if it's subsidized. It is still in our interest to have exchange and trade in the best terms that is possible.
Well, Alex, it may seem so complicated at the policy level, but you know what? It's the little things that sometimes we do to these products that we're exporting to the EU that either give us access or deny us access to the lucrative EU market.
Yeah, for example, how we handle our products and even the chemicals we use on our farms.
Now you know. On that note, we come to the end of our show. On behalf of the entire crew, thank you so much for watching. My name is Elijah Mwangi.
And I'm Alex Chamwada.